Hey everybody, Don Georgievich here with Job Interview Tools. Have you been impacted by COVID-19? Have you lost your job because of COVID? Well, today I want to give you 3 things that are going to help you tell employers, explain to employers why you lost your last job. Now, I get emails from people every single day, so you, my friend, are not alone. People are writing me, they're like, Don, I lost my job because of COVID. What am I supposed to tell employers now? Do I just go in there and say, well, it was COVID, I lost my job? And they're gonna be thinking, well, if you were any good, that maybe you wouldn't have lost your job. All these things are running through people's minds, and they just don't feel comfortable going in there and saying, I lost my job because of COVID. So today I want to break that down and just give you a strategy that you can use when you go on your next job interview, give you something to help explain to an employer what happened so that it doesn't make you look undesirable when you're talking to an employer and trying to sell yourself on why they should hire you. So first I want to start off with, I got an email. I want to read one of these emails to you that I got from a guy. And he says, I'm going to paraphrase some of this. He says, hey Don, how do I handle discussing my separation from my employer during COVID? He says, I was asked to resign. I was offered a severance and I received some legal advice. I declined the severance and then they terminated me. Bam, out. He says, I filed a grievance and the grievance committee found in my favor, recommended that I be offered my job back, but it was still up to the administrator to decline the recommendation, blah, 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 blah. This goes on for like 2 more paragraphs. It's just a bunch of whiny, 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 whiny. It's not my fault. I was fired. I really want my job back. And that is the worst thing you can possibly do, is to go into an employer and just dump on them and say, it wasn't my fault. I filed a grievance. I won the grievance. I should have my job back. That doesn't fly. That doesn't work. And besides, you are not on trial. You don't have to go into a job interview and talk to a prospective employer and give them, this boatload, this long, sad story of how you were let go and how it wasn't your fault and why they should hire you back and that you were treated unfairly. Employers don't want to hear that. You are there to talk about what you can do for them. You're not there to explain what happened in your last job. Or why you got fired. That is just so irrelevant, but people like to take this and just expand on it. And I think part of the reason people like to go so deep is because they really feel that it wasn't their fault. And they want to explain to an employer, someone who will listen, that, hey, it really wasn't my fault. I didn't deserve this. And you know what? Maybe that's true. But this actually brings me to just a quick little segue here. If you've ever heard of Jocko Willink, he wrote this book called Extreme Ownership. And what he talks about in extreme ownership is that you have to own everything. You have to own your mistakes. If you were fired, you have to own it. If it wasn't your fault, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You were let go. You have to accept responsibility for that. And if you don't, employers are just going to think that you're a crybaby. And I know you're not. But you're struggling inside trying to figure out how to present your story to an employer so that it makes sense. Well, I'm going to make it very easy for you. So I want to give you 3 things that you can use that are going to help you explain why you were fired. First one is own it. Own it. Go in there and say, you know what? Maybe if my numbers were a little bit better, maybe if my performance was a little bit higher, they wouldn't have let me go. But, it is what it is, and I was let go, and I accept total responsibility for that. Period. Another thing you can say, number 2, is you can go a little bit further and say, they had to let 30 people go. I was the last one to go. They wanted to keep me so bad, and my boss was fighting for me, but it was a numbers game and they had to let 30 people go and the axe just fell on me. Now, if that's not actually true, then don't say that. But if it's true and you were the last one to go, that's some leverage that you can scrape up and say, in addition to owning it, tell them that I was the last one to go. They really wanted to keep me and they promised to call me back. But again, only say that if that's true. And the third thing you need to remember is you are not on trial. You're not there to explain why you were fired. You are there in this job interview to explain what you can do for them, not how it didn't work out in your past job. Explain what you can do for them in this job. Take that job description, read through it thoroughly, find out what they are looking for, what is most important to them, and then go in there ferociously and say, you know what, these are all the kinds of things that I can do, and I can do them well, and I did them in my last job, and I did them better than anybody else. Here's how I can do those things for you. Take those employers' problems that they have, because that's why they're hiring you. That's why they're looking for people, is because they have problems. They're looking for someone to be able to solve those problems. So go in there, take that list of problems that they have, and talk to them about it. Work with them and say, you know what, I can deal with these things. These are things that I've done before. Have you thought about doing this? Have you thought about doing that? Here's how I can help you go further. Here's how I can build that territory. Here's how I can help you build out that application. You know, whatever it is, focus on their needs. If you go in there just focusing on what happened to you in the past, then you're making the interview all about you and why you were fired and how you were fired and how unfair it was. They don't care. They don't care. They want to hear what you can do for them. So spend as little of time as you possibly can talking about why you were fired. So let's go back to that email that I talked about the guy who wrote in and gave this big long sob story about why he was let go and boo-hoo. Here's what I told him to say. I said, take those 3 paragraphs of boo-hoo, wah-wah, and condense it down to one single statement, because that's all you got to do. You're not there to tell a story. You just want to give them one single statement about why you were fired. So here's what I told them to say. This is a 3-part answer. This is go in there and tell them that you were asked to resign because of COVID-19. Part 2, you declined to resign. You're like, you know what? I think I'm doing fine here. I'm not going to resign. And you know what? They called my bluff and they says, you're fired. And that was it. So I packed up my bags and I left. And you know, in hindsight, it was probably the best move I ever made because it got me out of an environment that I just wasn't performing as well as I could have. Period. Done. That's all you got to say. One single statement. If they want to ask you a couple of follow-up questions about that, that's fine. They can do that. But you don't want to go in there and just say, oh, my last employer let me go and they shouldn't have, and I filed a grievance. If you go in there and you tell a prospective employer that you challenged a past termination and that you took it to the review board and that you wanted your job back, they're going to see you as very litigious, and they are not going to want to take a chance on you, because if you're the kind of person that just cries foul every time, they don't want those kind of people working for them. They want people who are there for the company, who are there to deliver, who are there to show up, be a part of that culture, and help that company move forward. They don't want crybabies. They don't want people who are litigious. They don't want people who don't want to be there. It's as simple as that. So if you were fired because of COVID-19, pick yourself up and stop feeling sorry for yourself and go out there and tell employers what you can do for them. And focus on that. Take all the emphasis off of why you were fired, why you were let go. All right, my friend? Now, to help you go farther with this, head on over to jobinterviewtools.com. Download this book. It's called The Top 10 Job Interview Questions. See, this is top 10. So there's 10 of them in there. These have some of the most common interview questions that you can expect to get asked. Stuff like, tell me about yourself. Why do you want to work here? What are your greatest strengths? Stuff like that. And you are going to get asked those kinds of questions. These questions are written in a way that they're going to help you answer other questions. So once you learn how to answer these, this style of answering is just going to kind of, rub off on you, so to speak, and it's going to prepare you to answer a lot of the other questions that they are going to ask you. So that is all I have for you today, my friend. And if you were fired, I am very sorry, and I don't mean to make light of that. I have been fired probably more than anybody. I've been fired 7, 8 times in my career. So I'm not making light of it. I'm not calling you a crybaby or anything else like that. I've been there. I know your pain. All I'm saying is You don't need to share that pain with the rest of the world. All right, my friend, go out there and get them. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.